The book of Numbers is far more than a list of tribes and censuses. It has a powerful narrative of God's human rebellion, divine judgment, and relentless mercy. Set during Israel's 40-year journey through the wilderness, Numbers teaches us about trusting God, the consequences of disobedience, the importance of leadership, and God's enduring promises. In this video, we'll walk through the key teachings of Numbers and discover how this ancient book speaks directly to our lives today. We begin in Numbers 1, where God commands Moses to take a census of the Israelites. This isn't just a head count, it's preparation for war. The people are being organized into tribes, ready to enter the promised land. This teaches us that God is a God of order, not chaos. He leads his people with strategy and purpose. The census also reminds us that every person matters to God, counted and accounted for in his plan. In Numbers 2, we see how the tribes were arranged around the tabernacle, 3 tribes on each side, with the tabernacle at the center. This reveals something deeply spiritual. God must be at the center of our lives. The Israelites didn't just camp anywhere. They were positioned in a way that centered their lives around God's presence. This principle remains true for us today. Chapters 3 and 4 focus on the Levites, the priestly tribe who are set apart to serve in the tabernacle. They carry the holy items, oversee worship, and assist the priests. This teaches that ministry requires preparation, purity, and responsibility. God doesn't call everyone to do everything, but he assigns roles, and each person's contribution matters. When every tribe and role functions properly, the entire community. In Numbers 6, we find the famous Nazirite vow, a voluntary commitment of consecration to God. Nazirites avoided wine, cutting hair, and contact with the dead, symbolizing separation for holiness. This teaches us that dedicating oneself to God involves discipline and visible commitment. Today, while we may not take Nazirite vows, we're still called to set ourselves apart in heart and action. Perhaps one of the most beautiful passages comes at the end of Numbers 6. The priestly blessing. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. This blessing reminds us that God's heart toward us is kindness, protection, and peace. In Numbers 11, we witness one of the major themes of the book, complaining in the wilderness. The people grow tired of manna and cry out for meat. They romanticize Egypt, forgetting their slavery. God provides quail, but also sends judgment. The lesson is clear. Ingratitude blinds us to God's provision, and grumbling often invites consequences. This moment calls us to examine our own hearts. Are we trusting God in the waiting, or are we demanding what we want on our terms? Then in Numbers 12, Aaron and Miriam criticize Moses, and God responds swiftly. Miriam is struck with leprosy. This teaches that God takes slander seriously, especially against those he has appointed. It also reveals something about Moses. He is described as very humble, more than anyone else on the face of the earth. Leadership in God's kingdom is marked by humility, not pride. One of the pivotal moments in the entire book is in Numbers 13-14, when the 12 spies scout the promised land. 10 bring back a negative report, focusing on the giants and obstacles. Only Joshua and Caleb have faith to believe God will deliver them. The people side with the 10, and as a result, they are condemned to wander the wilderness for 40 years. This is one of the strongest teachings in Numbers. Fear and unbelief can delay destiny. God had already promised the land, but the people's lack of faith disqualified them from entering. In contrast, Joshua and Caleb show us what true faith looks like. They say, if the Lord delights in us, he will bring us into this land. Their trust in God's promise kept them alive, while the rest of their generation died in the wilderness. Faith pleases God, and obedience is the doorway to promise. In Numbers 16, we encounter the rebellion of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram Levites who challenge Moses and Aaron's leadership. God responds by opening the earth to swallow them alive. It is a terrifying reminder that rebellion against God's appointed authority is rebellion against God himself. Leadership is not a position to grasp, and it's a calling confirmed by God. This scene also reveals God's justice and his protection of his servants. Later, in Numbers 20, Moses makes a tragic mistake. When the people complain about the lack of water, God tells Moses to speak to the rock, but Moses strikes it twice in anger. Though water flows, God tells Moses that because he did not honor him as holy, he will not enter the promised land. This is one of the most sobering teachings. Disobedience, even by leaders, has consequences. Moses' failure shows that even great leaders must walk in obedience and reverence. In Numbers 21, we see a strange but powerful scene. The people complain again, and God sends poisonous snakes among them. When they repent, God tells Moses to make a bronze serpent and place it on a pole. Anyone who looks at it will live. This event becomes a foreshadowing of Christ, as Jesus says in John 3:14, just as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, so must the Son of Man be lifted up. This teaches that healing and salvation come by faith in God's provision. As the book progresses, we find laws about inheritance, sacrifices, and leadership. Numbers 27 is particularly noteworthy. The daughters of Zelophehad boldly ask for land rights, even though inheritance laws favored males. God responds favorably, affirming their request and changing the law. This moment teaches that God honors bold, faith-filled requests and that he is not bound by human tradition. Also in Numbers 27, God announces that Moses will not lead the people into the land, and he appoints Joshua as his successor. Moses lays hands on Joshua in front of the people, showing us that leadership must be passed on with clarity and blessing. God's mission continues, even as leaders change. In the final chapters, Numbers 33 gives a long review of the journey from Egypt to the plains of Moab. It's a record of God's guidance, discipline, and provision. It reminds us that every step in the wilderness matters. God is faithful in every camp, every test, and every lesson. Major teachings in the book of Numbers. God prepares and positions his people for purpose. Worship, leadership, and structure matter to God. Grumbling and fear delay the promises of God. Faith and obedience open the path to victory. Leadership must be humble, obedient, and appointed by God. God's mercy endures, even in judgment. Every step in the wilderness has meaning and purpose. God can use even failures to display his glory. Why Numbers still matters. The wilderness journey in Numbers is a mirror of our spiritual journey. We are often between promises received and promises fulfilled. We face trials, frustrations, and the temptation to doubt. But through it all, Numbers teaches us to trust God, to follow his appointed leadership, to avoid grumbling, and to hold on to his promises no matter what the circumstances look like. And above all, it teaches us that God is faithful even when we are not.